Today's Synth Exploration is sponsored by DistroKid, so if you want to release your music onto Spotify, iTunes and other great stores, use DistroKid and my link in the description for a discount. DistroKid costs $20 a year, and with that you can upload unlimited amounts of music to all the stores. Hello there and welcome to another BoBeats synthesizer video, and today we're taking a first look at the new Cobalt 5S. The Cobalt 5S is a 5-voice digital synthesizer. It's a virtual analog one, and it's the little brother to the Cobalt 8 that you might have seen here on the channel as well. So what Model has done is taking the larger Cobalt, slimmed it down from 8 to 5 voices, from 3 effects to 2 effects, and made this smaller version here. And to give you a sense of how small it is, here is the original Cobalt and the 5S. Notable differences are of course that we don't have this joystick on the 5S. Instead we have this touchpad, X and Y touchpad. It works. It's not as good as the joystick. On the Cobalt 8 we have a great key bed. It's actually one of the best in this price segment, feels really good. And on the 5S we have these mini keys here. They're okay, nothing special, nothing to write home about, but they work. Of course, the biggest difference is the lack of certain knobs over on the 5S. This means that you have to utilize a lot of shift functions, and the Cobalt 8 already had quite a few shift functions that you had to utilize, so now you have even more of that, and I'll get into that in the workflow portion of the video. In terms of build quality, it's actually pretty nice for a small synthesizer. You do have the same nice aluminum finish as on the bigger Cobalt, and unfortunately the same knobs, the caps, not the encoders. And it's something that I brought up in pretty much every modal video that I've done these last few years, that I'm not a big fan of these knobs, the caps here. But the underlying encoders are, as far as I know, of good quality. I haven't seen a lot of complaints with those breaking down, but I don't really like the knob, the caps. They have too little grip feel. But overall, it's a nice built little synthesizer. On the back we have headphones output, left and right outputs, sustain input, we have full-sized MIDI in and out, we have sync out, sync in, USB. It's not battery powered, but you can power it with a power bank using USB. It doesn't come with a power cord, but you do have the ability to use one if you should want to get one yourself. So with that out of the way, let's get to the meat of it, and that's of course what it sounds like. using the Cobalt 5S for a couple of weeks, and I also have a lot of experience with the Cobalt 8. I can say that one of the unique selling points here is the sound of the synth. Because the Cobalt does virtual analog really well. It has this nice high-definition sound. There's not a lot of audible aliasing that I can hear anyway. The filter design is just very smooth, and it's harder to do than you might think. There's actually a lot of virtual analog synths that just doesn't sound this good. Next up, I want to make a sound from scratch because I think it's really important that you see how it is to work with this synthesizer in practice so you can make an informed decision if it's right for you or not. But before that, quick word from today's sponsor.
Here's 5 reasons to try out DistroKid. Firstly, you sign up for about $20 a year and you can upload unlimited amounts of music. Secondly, it's really quick and easy to upload. Basically, anyone can do it without any prior knowledge. 3. There are different tiers of subscriptions, so if you want to release your music under, say, different artist names, or if you're starting a label, DistroKid has an option for you. 4. DistroKid lets you upload to relevant stores and streaming services, such as Spotify and iTunes, and it doesn't take long for the music to be available in the stores. 5. There's also the hyperfollow feature, which automatically creates a custom page where people can find out where to buy or listen to your music, and I personally really like this feature. So go and check out DistroKid using my link in the description. You get a little discount and you support the channel.
Next up, I want to make a sound from scratch so you get a feel for the workflow, because since this is a slimmed down Cobalt 8, it means that there's a lot of shift commands that you use to access various parts of the synth. And it's good if you get a feel for if this is a workflow that works for you or not. So let's make a sound. So here we have the oscillator section where we can change the waveform. We can also hit shift and change the algorithm. So here we have multiple different ones, basically changing the type of waveforms that we can use. So as you can hear, they can get pretty complex. So let's use this one, and I want to modulate it using an LFO. So we hit mod or hold mod, press LFO number 1 here, and now we can just turn this knob here and increase the depth. Now let's mix in oscillator number 2 because there's 2 oscillators. So we have this mix knob here. But instead of moving it manually, we can just set up a mod. And let's modulate the second waveform. So we're mixing in oscillator number 2, and we are also changing the waveform of oscillator number 2. And of course, if we want to, we could just hit shift. We can change the type of algorithm that we're using for oscillator number 2. We also have oscillator drift, which introduces a bit of randomness to the tuning, and it makes the sound seem and sound a little bit more analog in tone. So over on this side here we have the filter. It's also morphable. And there's also different filter types. So if I hold this button here and change the cutoff, we're changing the filter type from, for example, resonant low pass to balanced low pass. What's nice with this filter design in comparison to an analog synth, for example, is that it gives you a lot more control, whereas most analog synths around this price only has one filter or maybe two that you can change between two settings, for example, with cutoff, with resonance, but not much more. Here we have different filter types, we can change them, and they actually sound pretty good. Here's an example of a patch, another patch, not this one, that actually shows how good the filter sounds. So that was balanced low pass, and here is resonant low pass. Let's increase the resonance. For a digital filter, it actually sounds very good. There's not a lot of stepping, it has a very smooth feel, and when you have a resonant low-pass filter, it actually sounds quite analog in its tone and character, so that's a big plus. Now back to our little patch. Let's select LFO number 2, hold mod, enable it so that we can assign it, turn cutoff, and now we're controlling the cutoff using LFO number 2 here. Now if we shift, we can change the shape of this LFO here, so there's multiple different types. We can of course change the speed. Now what about effects? Well, this is one area where the 5S is slimmed down from the Cobalt 8. So we only have 2 effects. We have a delay and we have a chorus, and you access them by pressing this button here. You can see here, chorus effect or delay effect. So we press this button here to select chorus, for example, hit shift, and now we're using these knobs here to control the depth of the chorus, the modulation depth, the rate, the feedback, and the dry-wet mix. Hit it again, delay. Starting to sound pretty sweet, I think. And mid-recording, I accidentally managed to change the preset without saving, which is my bad. Nothing wrong with the synth, but I tried to recreate it best I could. And let's move on and talk about the envelopes. So this is where the shift commands get a little bit more complicated. So to change whatever envelope we're working with, we just press these buttons here. So now we have the filter EG selected. You can see amp EG, the mod EG. So we have filter, we have amp, and we have a mod EG. So the mod EG is assignable. So if we want to change the shape of the amp EG, we just hit this button here, shift, and now we're using these knobs here to change the amp envelope. So let's make a little pad sound. And to change the envelope for the filter, press this button here, and now we have access to the filter envelope. Instead of using the button combinations, we can just select whatever we want to edit here. So we have the patch, changes to the keyboard, for example, the voice modes. So there's different voice modes, unison modes, for example, or mono mode or poly as we're using now. And if we go to the amp EG here, we press this button, go down, and now we can actually select a different type. So there's different ones, exponential, snappy, soft. They're pretty self-explanatory. There's also longer versions, or long versions, basically giving you a much longer, more drawn-out sound, or drawn-out envelope, if you will. So for this sound, I really like the snappy one. Gives it this little bouncy feel. Now let's use this mod envelope to control the resonance. So hold mod, press this knob here, turn resonance. And to change the shape, hit this button here, mod envelope selected, hit shift, and use these knobs here to change it to whatever shape you want. And now is a good time to show you the ARP, so you can turn it on by using this button here, and also hold it down to program it. We then also have a sequencer that you can live record into, so it records whatever you're playing, or you can step record, so one note at a time. It also has automation lanes, so you can record changes to parameters that you're tweaking. So let me show you. So if I press record here, you can see that the sequencer is moving. And now we can record some parameter changes. So with some recorded parameter changes. So going into this video here, I wasn't quite sure if I'd like the sequencer, if it would be usable, but it's pretty straightforward and usable both for live recording and for step recording. You then also have this X and Y pad that is pretty easy to program. You just hold mod and press one of these buttons here for the X and Y axis. And then you enter the assign mode and you can assign it to, for example, the cutoff. But here we also encounter one of the limitations with the Cobalt, the Cobalt 5S, the 8 and the Argon 8, and that is that you only have 8 mod slots, and I think that's too few, because using all of these, the X and Y axis here, for example, on this pad, takes up, I think, 4 slots, if I'm not totally wrong here. So all in all, there's a lot of power here if they increased the number of mod slots to, say, 12 or 14, I think you could utilize it more. But then again, like, to be fair, a lot of users won't even use more than 2 or 3 per patch anyway. It depends. But using the X and Y, it's up 4 of the slots anyway. So it's a limitation that I think is worth bringing up. It might affect some of you, but probably not all of you. And lastly, you can use the synth with Modal's software. And I think for a small synth like this, it makes a lot of sense. It gives you a much better view of what is going on. So if you like to use a synth like this together with your phone or tablet or computer, you do have a nice software that makes everything more graphical. I don't generally test hardware synths with the software in mind, though. It's more a personal preference. I'm sure that there are others who will do this. I just don't use a hardware synth like that. I want to see what can it do out of the box without the software, without having like a screen tethered to it. I hope that makes sense. So that was my first look at the Cobalt 5S. As always, let me know down in the comments what you think about it, if these smaller form factor digital synthesizers are for you or not. Let us know, let's have a discussion down in the comments, and as always, have a great day and talk to you later.